Hi, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining and welcome to the first ever ZX Talk. And today we're going to have a talk and a very insightful discussion about supply chain management 4.0, disruptive technologies, and important use cases. So, just a little thing before we start, I would like to encourage you all to ask so many questions related to the topic for sure, and you can ask the question at the end of the presentation by our speaker later on, and you can do it by two ways. First, you can use the raise hand feature that is available in the Zoom platform, and also you can also just type down the question in the chat room, and I will read out the questions later on. So I'm not going to be alone for today. In fact, I'm already accompanied by Mr. Imran Sarwar. He is now actually the head of technology at Seberang Cross Technology, and he has already had quite a rigorous experience in the technology itself, and more than 16 years of experience. So uh, Dr. Imran is actually has already contributed to for IR readiness assessment, technology roadmap implementation, R&D, upskill strategies, solution architecture and development, and deployment strategies for smart manufacturing 4.0, smart city 4.0, smart supply chain 4.0, and smart construction 4.0 in agile DevSecOps landscape. So basically, those solutions leverage the industrial Internet of Things or IIoT, cloud and DevOps infrastructure, big data and analytics, along with machine learning, AR, and blockchain technologies. So actually, I was supposed to just read a brief CV of Mr. Imran, but turns out it's quite long. But basically, that shows how experienced he is. So he's with us now already. Hi, Mas Imran. Hi, Mr. Imran. I think you're still muted. Sorry. Hi.
Hi, very good afternoon.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm very good. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you. I
Okay.
think we have to be grateful because we're now staying healthy and fine. I mean, in this difficult situation of COVID-19, that's one thing that we should be grateful for.
Yes.
And luckily, talking about this pandemic, sir, the technology actually has helped us during the pandemic because our movement is actually restricted, right? And uh, actually, because of the technology, our jobs, our business can still run. For example, like right now, we're using the technology to interact with each other, right?
Yep.
So, talking about the technology itself, our topic for today is very, very closely related to technology: supply chain management 4.0, disruptive technologies, and important use cases. So, but actually, reading it itself is already intrigues me because supply chain management 4.0, and then uh, other things like industrial revolution 4.0 and something 4.0, those kind of terms it actually it are actually common terms that are currently used by people. But I was wondering a bit whether is it real or is it just a buzzword or is it just a myth? And probably we can start the talk for today's discussion with the questions, sir, and then we can continue to your explanation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mas Ranga, for the great introduction. Firstly, I'm very grateful to Zebra Cross Technology CEO Park Raymond and business team for giving me an opportunity to present my humble knowledge and experience regarding fourth industrial revolution, especially in terms of supply chain management 4.0. So supply chain is basically the backbone for any industry, and moving towards a digital disruption and transformation is the key for any nation and any business to basically success. not only tomorrow, but for starting from today. So it's not only a buzzword, rather than it's basically a reality which we are facing right now, especially in this COVID-19 situation around the globe. So moving towards this digital transformation is basically a key for success for any person or any entity.
All right, nice to know it. So I'm glad that it's not a myth and then it's not a buzz. Let's
Okay,
do it together, and let's just start the talk with your presentation, Mas Imran. Go
okay.
ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you able to see my slide, Mas?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
clearly
okay.
seen.
Okay, that's great. Thank you again for Zebra Cross Technology. I'm really humble and proud to be the head of technology for Zebra Cross Technology, where we are designing a solution, sophisticated solution using IoT, big data analytics, AI, machine learning, cybersecurity for IoT based and data analytics and control tower, which is very relevant to the talk today. So I have about a limited time, but I will appreciate your question and answer at the end of the session, and it will be great as well. So, what is the fourth industrial revolution? Like you know, it's a buzzword everywhere. And when we talk about Industry 4.0, it's basically one of the variation of the fourth industrial revolution. So, fourth industrial revolution is a superset that has the disruptive technologies, design principle, architecture, and those disruptive technologies, when they are applied in the industry, it become Industry 4.0. If they are applied in healthcare, it become Healthcare 4.0. If they are applied in agriculture, they become Agriculture 4.0. And similarly for supply chain 4.0 and logistic 4.0 and so on. So those disruptive technologies are basically changing the way the business work, changing the way the landscape of industrial sector that you can able to imagine anywhere, anytime. So the first industrial revolution started in 17th century with the mechanization. And then industry 2.0 was basically revolutionized the mass production assembly line, where basically labor and electrical energy was being used, and it is basically used in every sector. The third industrial revolution was more on automation, but this is manual automation, not a smart automation, still using electronics, IT, and so on. But the fourth industrial revolution is a data-driven, basically industrial revolution where the semi-autonomous or fully autonomous system is basically used by the data. So in the last century, the black water was one of the most important thing for the industry. The black water was oil, but in this industry, the data is the new oil. So let's see how basically we are moving in this direction. So 8 years ago, me and my colleagues, even everyone witnessed basically the Industry 4.0, where the revolution of Industry 4.0 was basically consist of nine technologies. And during the past 8 years, a lot of new technologies are coming. For example, blockchain, 5G communication, and so on. But for the supply chain 4.0, the most important disruptive technologies are basically IoT, which is Internet of Things. It forms the foundation for the fourth industrial revolution. It is responsible for the producing of the data. So there can be a sensors, there can be a device, machines, they can be autonomous robots. So all of them are basically IoT. Producing a data is not enough. Real-time data is basically the main thing. So the definition of IoT is anything that can connect, send data and receive data, but in real time is basically an IoT, because real time means if it is producing a data right now, it is being analyzed in the cloud right now, and basically the analysis result is being received right now. So the quality of service is basically one of the most important things. So apart from IoT, cloud computing, uh, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, 3D printing, and blockchain are basically one of the most core disruptive technologies which are changing the landscape of any sector that you can imagine. And especially they are contributing a lot in supply chain that we will be basically reviewing at the later in our presentation today. So for the fourth industrial revolution, basically it's all about from journey from data to decisions. So the data is being produced or created by producers like machines, sensors, um, mobile phone. In industry, we have PLC SCADA-based system. In supply chain, there can be a fleet, vehicles, and these data is being produced as a first data creation, and then after it is being produced, it is being sent to the cloud. So cloud is basically used not only for storage, but also accessibility and analysis. So when this data is being produced every second, then that data is being stored, and with the continuous producing of the data will be big in the cloud. And then from that big data, there are different kind of analytics. There can be a descriptive analytic, which is based on the previous or past data. Then there can be a diagnostic analytics. Then there can be a predictive analytics, that using the data and then the patterns and the variation, you can predict. You means like system, machines. So that predictive analytics is based on the past data and predicts what will happen in the future. And then there might be many variation of that prediction. So choosing the right prediction is basically the prescriptive analytics. So this is being done by the machine learning algorithms. So apart from the storage, we have tools, we have algorithms, we have statistical models that are working together by data engineer and data scientists to basically come up with a dashboard, information processing, or as autonomous decision, which is basically mentioned in the process number 3, which is info processing. And based on those deep insight and real-time even forecasting, it is helpful for the business and the end user to make a decision. So it all starts from data, which is being produced by IoT, towards the basically decisions, which is basically done by machine learning algorithm in the cloud. So what is the supply chain, current or previous supply chain, traditional supply chain, and why we should need to move, and what is the supply chain 4.0? So traditional supply chain have many challenges. According to basically McKinsey, they conducted a survey in the last decade and today, different part of the world, and then they basically come up and analyze the data of problems which basically supply chain stakeholders are facing. So they are red, which is basically extremely challenging, then light red, which is very challenging, yellow means somewhat challenging, and green means not challenging at all. So the biggest challenge right now faced by the supply chain stakeholder who are using the traditional supply chain is basically customer demand on the on supply chain. Like in the industry 3.0 or third industrial revolution, there's a mass production, right? But during the current landscape of COVID-19, highly customization, highly personalization, um, this kind of a concept will not be working. So the demand should be based on right now demand of different geographical demand, and the supply should basically form the basically follow the demands, not basically mass production. So customer demand on the supply chain with the real-time analytics is one of the biggest challenge they are facing. Hiring a qualified worker, forecasting is basically the third, the biggest challenge, followed by the increased competitive intensity, rising customer expectations, uh, using the different social media platform with a fingertip, the customer can able to swap and may like your product or may ignore your product. So there's a high competition. And then synchronization of the supply chain end to end, transparency, then insight into every stakeholder within the end to end supply chain. And basically, safety and visibility is one of the key challenges of the supply chain or traditional supply chain or supply chain 3.0 anywhere around the world. So when I'm comparing those uh, supply chain 3.0 and supply chain 4.0, as you can able to see that supply chain 3.0 is more on plan and control model, whereas supply chain 4.0 is plan, do, check, and act model. And that act is basically autonomous, where human are basically that's basically interacting rather than we are analyzing the data, and machines is basically taking the decision more faster with the critical analysis. Supply chain 3.0 is more in ineffective overall feedback loop. As you can see, it's basically incremental approach, but supply chain 4.0 is basically highly connected. Every different stakeholder in end-to-end supply chain is connected with each other. This means that individual and overall feedback loops are basically very efficient and very fast. A supply chain 3.0 is partial view of supply chain, whereas you have a 360-degree view of supply chain using control tower, basically a solution, which is also provided by our organization. A supply chain 3.0 is basically siloed with lack of collaboration, and supply chain 4.0 is simultaneous connection and communication with the design in collaboration. And then there is a excessive firefighting, increase of supply versus actual demand, and then impact on quality and increase in the cost, which are the major problem of traditional supply chain. And supply chain 4.0 basically address them in a very effective and efficient manner and reduce the cost, increase the productivity of all of the stakeholders within the end-to-end supply chain. So that's why supply chain basically is 4.0 is basically think of today, not tomorrow. Think of today. So supply chain 4.0 have a digital landscape with an agile organization. They are more on value-driven and data-driven approach, where the data is basically creating a transparency and into end-to-end environment. And all of this data is basically real time. So with the dashboards, you can able to understand what's going on in your end-to-end supply chain, even it is in a different geographical location. And then using a control tower, you have a better view and better control of everything. And then it's highly responsive, it's sensing intelligent, and basically it is increasing the productivity, decreasing the cost, and basically the ROI, which is return of investment, is basically quite much faster as compared to the traditional supply chain. So SCM, which is supply chain management, plus IT, plus emerging technologies of fourth industrial revolution makes up SCM 4.0, which is supply chain 4.0. So applying AI based, which is data-based, data-enabled supply chain 4.0 can yield a huge benefit. Some of them is basically it can cut up to 20 to 30% inventory depending on the industry. It will definitely increase the average fill rate by 3 to 7% points. It will generate a margin improvement as much as 1 to 2%, which is basically very conservative figure. So in some cases, it is more than 5, can identify opportunities for saving up to 15 to 20% of transportation costs using route optimization or route optimization and so on. And up to 80% of the predicted test cases can be more accurate than human expert at the same time. Like for humans, they can work in a shift, but they cannot able to basically work 24 hours. So using machine, the accuracy will be high, the uptime will be high, even with the predictive analytics and forecasting, it will be more accurate as compared to human-centric thing. This basically side, the source is World Economic Forum for that. And what are basically the advantages basically for the supply chain management 4.0 for? So if you are basically a stakeholder or a leader who are managing a supply chain or part of a supply chain, this might be very interesting for you because in that cases, there are different use cases that you can use, and then it will able to help you in terms of many things. So what are those improvements? Let's look at it. Improvement in customer service and demand fulfillment of 10% and even higher is 46%. This survey is basically conducted by Supply Chain Insight magazine around the world, where they were talking to leaders like you. And then second point is over here is faster and more effective reaction time to supply chain issues or crisis, which is about 41%. And then increase in supply chain efficiency, minimum 10% or greater, and then greater integration across the supply chain. There's a uniformity, there's a standardization and compliance across end-to-end, so it is easier to manage. And then optimization of inventory and asset productivity is 32%, and basically the rest are basically so on for that one. So our organization is also having a ZX Insight, which is basically looking into the control tower that can able to help the people or organization like you to have asset performance monitoring, insight, operation value, performance monitoring, and insight as well. So you will be having a 360-degree view of what's going on in every of your stakeholder. That will give you a transparency. And then it will also increase the productivity, increase of forecasting, and basically help you in that respect. So for more information, you can able to communicate with the business unit of our organization. So let's discuss briefly and in detail about some of the important use cases, which is related to supply chain management 4.0. The most important, one of the most important use cases about effective demand forecasting. So the big data analytics along with the machine learning is proving to be competent for effective demand forecasting. It recognizes the pattern, capture the demand signals, and help design predictions. So the data can be produced in the form of a real-time continuous by IoT devices or basically by humans and basically other department. And all of the data is gathered in the cloud where the big data analytics machine learning models are basically doing the real-time processing to give you effective and efficient demand forecasting. So 45% of the businesses that uses machine learning automation to augmented demand forecasting. Machine learning, which is ML, also improve forecast accuracy by 5% to 15% for individual products. So you can able to know how the 5 to 15% can able to affect the overall ROI of the chain, supply chain. It also creates a forecast from days to hours. So the thing that happens needs to be happening in the days, now it can be happen in the hours. So there's a efficiency, a faster time to reach to the market and to the customer that can able to affect and help your brand in the overall setting, and also reduce the time consumption for the adjustment and recalibration. The next use case is basically reducing freight cost. So when we talk about freight cost, according to McKinsey, the big data analytics and machine learning are improving by achieving it, by reducing the maintenance and response time by 10%, which is quite good, improve supplier delivery performance by 20%, and minimize the supplier risk. So basically reducing the freight cost in a daily basis can able to help a lot to gain more insight and more profit. And that basically saving of the money is basically in termed as an increase of ROI. One of the most effective and most common use cases, not only in supply chain, but other sectors are basically predictive maintenance. Wherever there's a machine, it needs a maintenance, it needs some monitoring. So by monitoring, real-time monitoring, and by having a predictive kind of an environment where you can able to apply a maintenance before it happens is basically a crucial thing. Because in a production environment, for instance, if one machine stop, whole production line will stop. That will basically increase the cost of overall cost of that. So it's always better to have a predictive maintenance where we can predict which machine will goes down, and you don't need to go specifically to close that machine. It will be autonomous landscape where the decision will be taken by the machine itself, and they will notify you, give you a notification wherever you are, and they will able to take a decision whether to stop that machine or slow it down. So at least it will not be having any issue. So artificial intelligence, which is highly dependent on big data analytics, and big data analytics is highly dependent on the data which is being produced by IoT or other system, is basically helps in visual pattern recognition, maintenance of the physical asset throughout the supply chain. And application of a pattern recognition is to be basically reached 38.9 billion US dollars by 2021, which is this year. But by the end of this year, it will be able to be more. And asset productivity needs to be increased after applying that up to 20%. And it will also reduce cost of maintenance by 25%. So you can imagine 100 million, 25% is basically a lot as well. So apart from those use cases, there are other use cases, other basically capabilities, which has been provided also by our organization is on the basically condition-based monitoring, predictive maintenance, line balancing, virtual flow meter, heat rate optimization, and route optimization or route optimization. So for instance, in condition-based monitoring, provides accurate response performance model, minimize unscheduled downtime, minimize time spent on the maintenance, and basically increase available running hours similar to predictive maintenance. which is basically provide a more accurate data capture, alert on potential machinery breakdown. Even before the machine gets breakdown, you can able to get a notification basically on that. Manage for better planning for the production and maintenance, as well basically better planning for spare part in inventory. So inventory management system is a part of it. Line balancing will increase the line performance with a minimum production loss, and then assess buffer sensitivity with the respect. And importantly, route optimization can save up until 20% of the cost minimum, if you can able to apply. Some of our clients basically use that as a POC and their product, and they leverage the profit of route optimization of their logistic in their supply chain in Indonesia. So let's discuss something, basically one of the most important aspect to look into. What are the emerging technologies that are taking this disruptive landscape even to the next level? And many of us basically think that basically the blockchain is only used for cryptocurrency. Actually, cryptocurrency is just a one use case. There are hundreds of different kind of use cases, and blockchain is basically used not only in fintech but also in healthcare, supply chain, logistic, manufacturing. So wherever there is a data, you can able to use blockchain, and blockchain provides a very good, effective cybersecurity and data integrity feature, which basically have an important aspect to look into while you are basically having um, uh, while you have having a disruptive landscape in this regard. So let's look into what is blockchain. We compare three most famous blockchain in the world, and then which companies, for example, or in which sector are using blockchain. And then we go even more deeper of use cases, which is uh, blockchain enabled use cases in supply chain management. So let's review that. So the blockchain is basically a decentralized ledger of all transactions across peer-to-peer network. This means that there is no centralized entity which is controlling the data or basically owning the data, rather than it's basically decentralized. So you may be asking that, oh, if the data is private, how other stakeholders can able to have the data which is private and confidential? So there are two types of blockchain. One is basically public blockchain, where the stakeholders are public entities like government, some of the corporate, but there is also private blockchain. So in the private blockchain, let's say you are group of companies, so there will be servers or cloud in different companies. So there are multiple stakeholders in different part of the geographic location. So decentralization is a key in blockchain. And then using this technology, participant can able to confirm about the transaction and authority. So it's nearly impossible to basically hack, because the token, the security token, is basically changing every second or every minute. And then you must needs to have different entities. The verification will not be from one server or one cloud, but different infrastructure. So if you are having some transaction or some request for the data authorization or device authorization, that authorization successful needs to be depending on all of the stakeholders. So if one of the stakeholders say unauthorized, it will be unauthorized. If all of the stakeholders say it's authorized, then it will be authorized. So it's basically very good for cybersecurity aspect, as well as data security and data integrity. So how the blockchain works? Let's, for example, someone requests a transaction. It can be a device for authentication, or any of the stakeholders transmitting a data. It can be smart contract. It can be anything within the supply chain. And that request will be basically sent to a decentralized number of servers. And those servers are act as a P2P, peer-to-peer network. So if all of those servers are basically validate that data or request or authentication, then the authorization will be given, and then the transaction is considered as successful. So this is important in this regard, because it can able to give us increased transparency of all of the transaction, whether it's a monetary transaction or data transaction or data sending and receiving or data communication. So it provides increase in transparency, and also the accuracy of tracking those things are basically very good. For example, that if you would like to track those requests and those data among the stakeholder for auditing purpose, it can provide you. Whether all of the supply chain stakeholder are in one country or in different countries, it doesn't matter. So it provides transparency, and you can able to track every single transaction that has happened, whether it's a monetary or data communication. It is basically having a permanent ledger thing that you can able to know about the details of the data. As you are the owner, you can able to know about every aspect of the data which has been transferred from here to there, transactions, and even basically communication. And importantly, it basically reduce the cost, because by reducing the cost, you are increasing your profit, which is increasing your ROI. But apart from the benefit, there are some challenges that I would like to mention over here. It's a new technology which is complex in nature. So because of the sophistication, it is difficult to find a proper person who can able to basically work on that. So there are less people because it's new. But gradually, more people are adopting. There are open source technology as well for the blockchain. So I think it will not be an issue later. Then there are some regulation implication, like for blockchain, it depends on the government, especially the state bank of the government, to provide a regulation, not only in the case of cryptocurrency, but how the mechanism of blockchain will be worked, like smart contract. Like say you wanted to buy some asset for your supply chain, so you can use that blockchain, and then the data in that, for example, contract, which is saved in the blockchain, cannot be tampered. But using those system, basically it's new in Indonesian landscape and basically other countries as well. But Singapore, for example, our neighbor, and in Malaysia and Thailand, they have already adapted and using it already. There's some implementation challenges because it's difficult, and then there's a competing platform. There are a lot of blockchains, so which one to use, which one not to use, this might be a challenge. But for the sake of basically providing you an important comparative analysis, we at ZebraCost basically compare three important blockchain platform. They are basically Ethereum, Hyperledger, and Corda. So Ethereum, maybe you are familiar because of the Bitcoin. So Ethereum may also have a cryptocurrency, but the technology of the blockchain used in that cryptocurrency is basically a very powerful engine. So like I mentioned in the beginning, there can be a public blockchain and private blockchain depending on the use. So the mode of operation among this is that Ethereum is a public blockchain. And if you would like to have a private blockchain, then you have to go for the Hyperledger and basically Corda. Hyperledger is basically providing an open source platform for you, and because the governance for the blockchain in Ethereum is only limited to the Ethereum developer community, whereas Hyperledger, they are more towards Linux Foundation, and Corda is on R3. If you are familiarized with the programming languages, Ethereum is basically using Solidity, and Hyperledger is using Golang as well as Java, whereas Corda is using Kotlin and Java. Do you remember that in the previous slide I mentioned about the operation? When the request has been sent, it will be verified and authenticated by different servers, right? So that is called consensus. There's a consensus algorithm running on every server who will together authorize and basically verify the transaction. So there are different names for that. So this consensus algorithm in Ethereum is called POW, which is power of POW. And then basically for Hyperledger and Corda, it is called pluggable framework. Consensus mechanism in Ethereum is required acceptance from all nodes. So if there are, let's say 1,000 different kind of a server in different geographical location, if one of them fail, your transaction, because of the authentication and security breach, everyone will fail it. So that's why the security is tremendous. Whereas in Hyperledger and Corda, it can be achieved by the majority. That majority is basically threshold depends on you, whether you want 70%, 80%, and even beyond that. Access, because Ethereum is public, so anyone can able to access, means use it, and they can able to utilize it. But the data will be safe for the owners. That doesn't mean that I can able to access other parties' data. No, I cannot. The only thing is that those authorization servers also don't know what is inside those ledger because it has been encrypted. Access level for Hyperledger and Corda, because they are private, so it can be one organization or enterprise or group of entities which are working together. Efficiency, Ethereum is basically low because it's public and there are thousands of servers around the world. And then efficiency for Hyperledger and Corda, basically they are high. Transaction speed is slow in Ethereum, whereas faster in others. And data handling among the Ethereum and others are basically read and write access, but the access is based on the basically mode of operations. So if you would like to plan to use or create a POC prototype for blockchain, I think Hyperledger is a good start for you because it's an open source. Okay. Okay. So there less time is basically left. Okay. So moving on, basically these are some of the companies who are using blockchain in their supply chain: Airbus, SAP, Ford, Walmart, Subway, Carrefour, Nestle, and so on. And basically companies in other sectors like in energy, in trade and travel and banking, for example, is being mentioned over here. So blockchain is becoming very popular because it has provided a lot of basically good advantages, and that advantages can be utilized in every sector. So as you can see, there are even more than that sector, but I just mentioned few of them. So what are the use cases for the blockchain? It's quite interesting to basically quickly go through because I have less time and the admin is basically asking me to be faster. So basically in transaction settlement, you can able to have a clearer settlement terms through blockchain verification. In audit transparency, you can able to have an audit of end-to-end supply chain in terms of finance, in terms of data. For the tracking, basically for let's say for the accurate cost information, you can able to know about how the transaction between the vendor happened, and if there's some discrepancy, you can able to know in a very efficient manner. And then in terms of better shaping of the data, it will create improved data tracking for the supply chain that we can able to look into. Preventing compliance violation, for example, over here, Standard Alliance to assist with building new blockchain based standards will be basically helpful. And then basically for reducing human error in your supply chain, it can able to basically help resolve conflict between different entities and different stakeholder, especially in with regard to data and basically regard to transactions. And then for the automation, it will basically leverage providing transparency across basically every industrial scale, and then also help you in the monitor basically the performance of all of the machines as well. And then in automated purchasing and planning case, for example, what I like is this that you can able to have some set of rules and regulation, and based on that, it can able to purchase using AI plus blockchain enable purchasing and planning. And then also importantly, it will reduce the counterfeit goods. But apart from those 9 use cases, the most important and famous use case is basically traceability, which is end-to-end traceability. Let's look into it very fast and very quickly. So let's say you have a supply chain, okay, and you have an end-to-end supply chain. In this regard, you have a supplier, manufacturer, warehouse, distributor, retailer, and customer. So because of IoT enabled ecosystem that is producing a data using barcode, there will be a barcode, and every transaction or every basically data communication that is happening in the supply chain will be recorded in a ledger. So in the step 1, for example, manufacturer and supplier can find a suitable parties using the blockchain supply chain platform, initiate an agreement with smart contract. And then in step number 2, supplier upload the quality test document and manufacturer check and authenticity using blockchain, because there will be no counterfeit and no authentication authorization problem. They will be attacked in all of the materials, either it will be QR code or RFID, and then ship that materials. Both parties track the process. So the supplier and the manufacturer, they can track the process in real time. And then in the step number 3, the manufacturer gets the product and release the payment once it is being received. And then track all the production line, validate the final product quality test document, add QR code or RFID chip on the packages depending on you, and then monitor storing in the warehouse. Create a smart contract agreement with a verified distributor and ship the product. The step number 4 will be the distributor tracks the shipment, release the payment upon the product receipt, and then they ship the product to the retailer. And the retailer on the step number 5 will track the shipment. Upon receiving it, release the payment to the distributor, forecast the customer behavior, and offer app for the end customer. Finally, the most interesting and good thing in the step number 6, you as a customer, for example, if you are a consumer, by tracking the QR code, you can able to get all those information from first step until the last step. So this is called traceability, and basically it will be basically very good. They are using in halal products. They are using to check the halal. They are checking to basically check and verify different products and projects basically for you that you are buying it. So the second last slide for today is how end-to-end traceability can able to help us. Is basically it will save time and cost in supply chain management by reducing a paper. So blockchain cannot be implemented unless you have a system that use big data analytics and AI machine learning. And you cannot have a AI machine learning and big data which will make a decision real time unless you have implemented IoT. So IoT, big data analytics, AI machine learning, and blockchain form a combination of a disruptive technology very relevant for basically the supply chain. And then basically in terms of it also helped educating mistake and fraud. So as you know, supply chain is big, so you have to minimize the mistake and fraud. Blockchain can help you optimizing the storage and transport and distribution process, and it also offers reliability and the integrity of the shared information, fostering an efficient collaboration between different parties involved, or offer transparency as well as basically end-to-end visibility, not only to the stakeholder, but also to the customer that will able to help your brand in the brand. So we at Zebra Cross, we have solutions basically that can help you to move your supply chain from 3.0 to 4.0. We have an IoT platform, which is industrial grade IoT device, IoT platform. And at the same time, we have a data analytics basically solution as well, which leverage control tower, data analytics platform, and advanced analytics services. So we can able to assist you in your journey moving towards digital transformation, whether you are in supply chain or any other sector. And our basically value proposition is this, that we have a proven platform. We are having a value driven implementation. We have a capability in terms of providing a sophisticated solution that can ease your basically business need and basically increase your ROI. And we have a team that competent and basically qualified person who can able to assist you in your journey of transformation. So with that said, I would like to thank every one of you for your time, for listening to me. And I'm really grateful to everyone for basically giving us the opportunity to share our humble information and product knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Imran, for the very insightful information about technology to supply chain 4.0. Now we're entering the Q&A section, and in principle, I encourage you guys to ask directly to Mr. Imran and use the raise hand feature in Zoom platform. You can do it by clicking the captions and raise hand. But actually, Mr. Imran, while we're waiting for someone to raise a question directly, we have actually acquired some questions as well, both in the private chat directly to me and also in the main chat that is available to everyone to see. And I'll just start from the first question to me. Yeah, the first question is actually, you mentioned earlier about the for industrial revolution 4.0 and also supply chain 4.0. The main game is to have data-driven decision making, right? Something like that. And what's important about the data itself, not only that you have to analyze it, but first we have to acquire it, we have to probe it. And the question is related to whether should we invest in buying existing data or invest in gathering their own data. So can you basically give us some opinions about it?
According to McKinsey, Gartner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and basically Accenture, all of the consulting companies and all of the important stakeholders around the world, which are basically moving, even including us, we basically, in order to proceed with the digital transformation journey, the first step for you is to do the readiness assessment to understand what is a problem and how you wanted to eliminate a problem and what you wanted to achieve. So this is the first step for every organization. Definitely, there might be a production line problems, there might be ROI issues, and they might be basically productivity issues. So when you identify those things, then this will be the first step. And then second step is basically to engage with the companies like us so we can able to help you build firstly the POC, the prototype. And then once you able to know about the prototype and how it is giving advantage to you, then you can able to scale even more. We can able to assist you. So you have to think big, but we have to start small. And then to starting small, you have to basically engage a reliable, basically domain expert company like us in this regard. So acquiring a data is important. And my humble opinion is that it has to be real time. This means that it should be basically IoT. Because if you would like to test a real time decisions, you cannot able to use a fixed data, but you have to use the data which is continuous. So IoT can able to enable that. So if you have a legacy system, for example, uh, one option is this: you have to buy a new machines, but another option is this that we can able to help you convert those machines, for example, into IoT enabled machines and using M2M and M2M communication protocol, then the data can be acquired. So the first thing is we can able to produce the data or we can have a data and then use that data in our analytics platform to give you an insight. Okay. So the second step is move towards IoT, and then third step is basically to create a prototype for you.
All right. Thank you very much for the explanation, sir. So, uh, basically, while we're waiting some other questions from the chat room as well, but actually, we have one audience raised his hand, and for Mr. or Mrs. Taki Husaini, I will unmute the microphone for you, and if you want, you can also turn on the video. So you may ask the question now directly to Mr. Imran, please.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the great presentation, and we got a lot of information from Dr. Imran. So I have two questions so far. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you, but I think the connection is not too good. There. But just continue.
Yeah. Okay. What about what about now?
Better.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Thank you. So my question is, perhaps you can share with us, like, so what do you think like the most challenging issues when you implement like supply chain 4.0? So you can like determine which sector is difficult to drive. It could be people, it could be like infrastructure or policy, or so on. So you can share your experience that ZebraX has done in Indonesia or in Asia so far. So my second question is about business model. So do you think concept of supply chain 4.0 will affect an existing business model? So what I mean is how much is influence it has on our business model and what effects will arise while it happen. So although we know that we are forced to follow 4.0, 5.0, or 6.0 in the future, so I just want to get your my point from your side. So it will be affect an existing business model or not? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak, for the question. Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. Imran, you
hello
can
from my
directly
side.
answer
So
it.
Thank you so much. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much for asking this question. Okay, what are the challenges? Actually, there are many stakeholders in the supply chain. The first question was basically the challenge. Look into important aspect. Well, number one is basically in terms of strategy, collaboration among different stakeholders in the supply chain to make them on the same table. And then basically looking into planning aspect, human capital, available of the funds, and then decision of basically are the main pillars that you need to basically consider, because when we are moving towards a digital transformation journey, you need basically approval from your higher management. Then basically you have to make on board all of your general managers, for example, in your supply chain to be on the same thing, and then make them envision what you can achieve after moving to supply chain 4.0, for instance. What are the advantages? So when everyone is on the same page, then the next step is basically on your human capital, because there might be more a lot of upskilling or reskilling you need to do. There might be many manual workers that needs to upskill basically to the needs, and there might be new jobs coming, and then all jobs obsoleting. So human capital is another challenge, uh, especially in terms of upscaling, because some of the older people or some of the uh, medium person, for example, age person, they are in a comfort zone. Uh, with today's COVID-19 situation, I believe that those people or those companies who are moving towards rapidly moving towards the digital transformation right now, they have to look into survival as well. So the speed of the digital transformation on an organization level becomes a bit slow. But I believe that optimistically, 2021 and 2022 is the right time to move, because if we don't go for the autonomous system, then whether it's COVID-19, 20, 25, or 30, manual worker might basically be an important factor to stop the supply chain or factories. So if you have the approval from the board of directors or higher management, and you have the fund, then I think half of your problem has been solved. So you don't need a fund, enormous fund, to transform your whole supply chain within one day. Like I mentioned, it is a journey. So in that journey, you need to go for the step-by-step approach. And in that step-by-step approach, it will be a first POC and then move towards the greater system, because every different stakeholder in the supply chain have a different need, different requirements, and different technology that will be used to basically make them on board as a part of a supply chain 4.0 premise. Second question was basically on in terms of business model. To me, one of the important pillar which many of other stakeholders are not mentioning, but it is an important pillar of the fourth industrial revolution, is a business model. Definitely, business model needs to be modified. And in data-driven industry, basically in the transformation, a business model needs to be tweaked. So firstly, the leadership needs to look into leadership 4.0 aspect. They need to have a proper awareness on basically how technology can able to play its important role in the business to achieve short-term and long-term goals in the era of fourth industrial revolution. And last thing is basically with that business model, what is the landscape within the organization and outside of the organization, and how you can able to have an agile aspect of the things, agile mindset, and basically with the lean process. in the consideration. So the technology will solve your problem and basically enable you to move faster in a data-driven landscape. So I hope I answer your question, Mas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Imran, for the answer. And for the first question, I pretty much agree actually that digital transformation journey is not a one day or something like that, and we can definitely do it in several phases, and we can at the beginning do some mapping first, which one is actually sort of like the low hanging fruits that can have much higher impact compared to the others, something like that. And we still have time for a couple of questions, but I'm really sorry, guys. We might not be able to accommodate all the questions in the chat room, but I guess we're still on it for two more questions. So I'll just write the next two questions, Mas Imran.
Okay, and those questions, if we didn't answer them, maybe we can able to email or some other thing by
Yeah,
business to
yeah,
answer it as
definitely. We
well.
can be in touch with the audiences that ask the questions through sending them emails about the answer of the question, right? So next question would be, few companies such as Amazon, Alibaba, and logistics companies are attempting to own the entire process of supply chain steps, from accepting customer demand to fulfillment and delivery. How the digitalization in SCM accelerates this, and what this means for small logistic player? Will they become irrelevant in the future, or they will be more critical player in the future? If so, how we are supposed to do that?
Okay, the digital transformation for the fourth industrial revolution advocate three things. Number one, increase the productivity. Number two, efficiency in end to end. And number third is basically transparency. So whether Alibaba or Amazon basically move towards this thing, they are setting the standard. And as a small player or medium player, we must need to basically move in the direction of the digital transformation for the supply chain. But if we move, that doesn't mean that the bigger player can eat us. No, uh, the world is very big. There's a lot of opportunities, and no matter how big the player, they cannot able to accommodate everything. So for the survival of the future, it is essential for every organization to equip themselves in the digital transformation. And then because of the competition is increasing, so if we don't move towards this supply chain management 4.0 or any transformation, whether it's a manufacturing or agriculture, we cannot able to save the operation cost. So for lowering down the capex and opex, increasing the productivity, personalization of the product, and basically better efficiency to go for the market reach. It is important for you to transform in the digital or data-driven landscape, because those technologies will enable you to compete with either small player or big player, either in a generic market or even in the specific or niche market as well. So for the survival in the future, it's basically important for any sector to move towards in this direction. And using this direction, it has been proven that you can able to have a higher ROI. You will able to increase your productivity and decrease the cost in every aspect of your business.
All right. Thank you very much for your explanation, sir. So I'm really sorry. We're very limited in terms of time, but I guess we still have we still can accommodate one more question, Mas Imran, if you don't mind.
Sure, no
And
problem.
this is, I think, a very interesting question. With Indonesia being a very large country in terms of geographical area, and also we're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, archipelago country in the world, how to address the connectivity challenges to deploy SM 4.0, especially in remote areas?
Very interesting and very good question, especially related to our product as well.
Yeah.
As you know that Indonesia is very big country and it's basically having an enormous potential, whether it is basically energy sector, logistics supply chain, or even agriculture. The connectivity is basically a key for data to transform or transfer from the IoT device to the cloud and also to control and monitor the devices. So connectivity in fourth industrial revolution is never a problem. there are many different ways. If, of course, if you are in a city, there are 4G, 5G technologies. But even if you are in a remote location, you can able to leverage the communication technologies like unlicensed band technologies like LoRaWAN, where you can able to still have a connectivity. And there are some other options as well, whether you are in a remote location or not. So we have a portfolio to have a similar kind of a situation scenario where our solutions in Zebra Cross, especially IoT solutions, are addressing those things. Even in the remote location, we can able to have a digital landscape using LoRaWAN, for instance.
All right, cool. Thank you very much for the explanation, Mas Imran. And thank you very much as well for having this very insightful talks and discussion with the audiences as well. Yeah, I'm really sorry for the other audiences or for the other questions that haven't been answered yet. But for sure, we can be in touch with the audiences who asked questions already, and we will deliver the answer of your questions through your personal email that you use for the registration process. So and related to the materials of the presentation, Mr. Imran, would it be possible for everyone to be shared as well?
I think if business is, it depends on the business division of the Zebra Cross.
Yeah.
If there are some PNC information, if you think that we can take it out, otherwise we are okay with that.
Cool. All right. So that's a good news as well. So we can share as well the material later on. So that's basically concludes our session for today. Thank you very much for all the audience and also for the enthusiasm. We received so many questions here in the main chat, not mentioning that I also received a lot of questions in the private chat as well. So I thank very much. We thank very much for the enthusiasm, and please stay safe and healthy, everyone. And I'll see you in the next CX talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. Bye bye.